Greetings to everyone. I welcome you all to today's lecture on Engendering Art. In today's lecture, we would be discussing some very pertinent issues related to the concept of engendering art. So, let us first discuss as to what is engendering. Engendering is the process of applying gender related tools to understand specific objects like sculptures, paintings or rock art, etc. Engendering also explains different models of masculinity and femininity. It also enhances our understanding about the idealized behavior that was projected through these various art forms, as well as their social and ideological apparatus, which can be used to understand the alternative perspective that can be devised on the basis of this kind of a research of various source materials. Now, there are certain technical terms that one must be aware of when one is undertaking an understanding or a research on various items or various pieces of works of art, for example a painting or a sculpture. So, the two basic terms that one must be aware of are the gaze and the posture. Now, when I am talking about the gaze, historically it has been described as two different types of gaze, and this is relevant even in contemporary times when one is undertaking any kind of interpretation of an artwork. One is the external gaze and the other is the internal gaze. So, the external gaze basically refers to the viewerly gaze, that is the gaze of the viewer. So, anyone who is looking at a piece of art, with what perception or with what is the kind of look that that person is giving, or what is the idea that crops in that person's mind as he or she is looking at an artwork. And another one is the internal gaze, which means gaze of the figure of the art material itself. So, here basically what has to be analyzed is that where is the gaze of the figure focusing at, whether the gaze it at itself or at the partner or at the viewer. So, these are some of the parameters that become very important when one is trying to analyze a particular piece of art, and it is on the basis of internal gaze that it is indicated whether a particular figure is divine or it is human. So, whether a particular image falls in the category of secular or it falls in the category of divine. So, therefore, it is very important and crucial to understand the concept of gaze. Then another very important theme that becomes kind of again of great interest to art historians is the posture. Now, there are various angles of a figure that could be standing or sitting or lying down or kneeling, and there are also different states of any piece of art. It could be solid or static or mobile, then also different feelings that it conveys. It could be maternal, sensual love, or provocative, or kind of a frontal nudity, or it could also be the back of the image. So, the posture reveals specific aspects that are related to the process of construction of gender roles, and it also kind of enhances and it also diversifies the perspectives that could be devised from time to time by looking at these images. So, in order to understand the entire process of interpretation of artwork, it cannot be done solely on the basis of a single discipline of history. So, we have a whole range of multidisciplinary approaches that are very important and crucial in order to understand art history. So therefore, there has to be an amalgamation of history as well as women's studies, then anthropology, sociology, psychology, and on the basis of a clearer understanding and a multidisciplinary approach can a clearer picture emerge. So, it is in this background that I would like to carry on further the discussion on representing the body. The theme that had been researched in detail by the scholar Vidya Dehejia. So, Vidya Dehejia's work was in fact the first systematic attempt at a clearer gender analysis of Indian art and especially of the post-Mauryan sculptures. Another very important and crucial work in this category has been that of Seema Bawa's. There are several issues of spectatorship as well as agency, the female agency as well as the agency of the artist that have been described by art historians. So, Vidya Dehejia has used the term engendering Indian art to explore the embedded gender issues that one can explore in various art objects. So, therefore, any kind of interpretation of early Indian art must be understood from the background of the perspective and also from the background of the entire historical tradition on on the writing of India's past or on the interpretation of Indian history. And so, as the interpretations were changing, so was the description of the various art forms also underwent a change. Here I would like to mention Indian historians like V.S. Agrawala or A. Kumaraswamy, who discussed only specific art styles like the Gandhara and the Mathura style of art to prove certain nationalist agendas like the indigenous origins of Indian art. So, the idea that was conveyed in their work was that both these styles developed in a unique way and in fact they owed their origin to the indigenous styles of Indian art. Then the statues of Buddha were studied in great detail to reinforce the pre-existing notions of male energy, and this is how the interpretation went on, and there was a lot of focus on the greatness and the stylistic depiction of different features of the images of Buddha and Mahavira. Now, coming to the colonial interpretation, the colonial writings on Indian art were quite biased and they largely were focused on the issue of nakedness, the issue of nudity. So, this kind of a projection of Indian art was deliberately done in order to explain the degenerated native culture, and by doing so the colonial administrators indicated the lowly position of women in the so-called barbarous civilization. So, again there was an attempt to glorify their own existence in a colony like India, and in order to justify their presence and in order to explain to the larger public the importance of their continued rule in India, because if they left, then again there would be going back to that degenerated past, which was nothing but exploitation of women, and the evidences for that were shown in the form of several sculptures in which there was outright nudity that was to be displayed. So, therefore, a very myopic view again I would say as far as the colonial interpretation of Indian art is concerned. Now, the nationalist interpretation that was being developed by the scholars like Kumaraswamy, they studied the visibility of goddesses within the textual as well as the artistic traditions to understand the feminine principle. So, again there was a specific viewpoint that was to be studied and that was to be applied to any kind of interpretation of several art works. So, Kumaraswamy linked art production to the concept of Maya and Shakti to prove feminine prosperity and status. And so, this is how the kind of nudity or the kind of portrayal of women with their feminine features was kind of justified. Now, a very new and interesting perspective to this entire debate has been added by Seema Bawa in her work Gods, Men and Women, Gender and Sexuality in Early Indian Art. Seema Bawa has drawn attention to a paradox that how as a society we worship goddesses on the one hand but disrespect women's rights on the other. So, this in fact is the very introduction to the concept of femininity in Indian art, and a valid question that is raised here is that can the study of ancient Indian art from the perspective of gender kind of throw some light on this paradox, and how if we take a detailed study and if we kind of observe some of the changing interpretations of the several art styles and artworks, then definitely some kind of explanation can be given. So, it is this question the art scholar and the author Seema Bawa has pursued by focusing on the art of post-Mauryan period and more specifically from 181 BCE to 320 CE. Now, Seema Bawa's approach is basically to examine representations of women in visual arts by looking at different categories of representations. So, she has not focused or limited her study only to the sculptures of goddesses or divinity, but she has covered a wide variety of women like mothers or lovers, married couples, wives, non-wives, yakshis and ogresses. So, every category has a chapter assigned to it and a detailed analysis of the available art forms belonging to each and every category has been undertaken. So, one important category that has made its appearance time and again in several art forms is that of the reproductive woman. For example, the essential reproductive woman in this particular chapter, Seema Bawa has examined two types of women, one representing Lajja Gauri and another representing Dugdha Dharini. So, basically both these types personifying reproductive qualities, and art as indicative of the reproductive status of women has been a tendency from prehistoric times onwards, as was discussed by me in some of the preceding lectures also. So, by examining different attributes such as nudity, ornament, gaze as well as posture, Bawa has raised questions on how gender is constructed in visual art, and it is for you and me as students of art history to explore this paradigm. Now, a question that arises here is that does the representation of reproductive qualities by showing prominent features of the female body like the hips or the breasts, does it represent female power of procreation, or does it reduce women to their reproductive status? So, no clear cut answer to this kind of a paradigm, however, can be provided. An alternative perspective, however, can help us in understanding the need of an interdisciplinary lens that would incorporate important discussions related to both the art history as well as the women's studies, gender studies, an approach which is distinct from previous examinations, whether they were Orientalist art historians or they were nationalist art historians, because both of them were rooted mostly either in the colonial perspective by European scholars who wanted to further the colonial agenda of colonial rule, or the nationalist perspective, which again was merely a counter to the colonial project. So, both these kind of interpretations do not really kind of do an objective analysis of the artworks. Now, a very important statement that has been made by Judith Butler while describing the importance of art in understanding gender as well as historical transformation. So, Judith Butler's work on gender as performance is very crucial to recognize the markers of gender in outward manifestations. So, when we are looking at any piece of art or any sculpture, the kind of posture, the kind of gaze, the ornaments, the clothes, the jewelry, they have a whole lot of discourse to share, and it's a narrative and it is not merely an image. So, it is important to perceive each and every piece of art as representative of the age in which it was manifested. Now, another very interesting detail that has been highlighted in the contemporary works on art and history is that of reading silences, and some of the most interesting insights that Seema Baba has offered are from reading those silences, which again is a very powerful method in unraveling several power structures. And one of the chapter on the non-wives clearly outlines this concept. So, both the nuns as well as the prostitutes, the courtesans, are clubbed into the category of the non-wives. So, these non-wives which are placed in a separate category were those who remained undefined by reproduction, and this definitely throws light on the gender perspective as well. Now, Bava points out that though women are depicted in terms of their gendered identity, there was no such depiction of men. So, while women were projected as mother or as a wife or as a lover or as a prostitute or as a ganika, the same kind of depiction was not true as far as men were concerned. So, men were not depicted as fathers or husbands or male prostitutes, rather their social and economic standing are used as important markers. So, this again is a very pertinent observation. Another absence is that of the nuns, who are virtually absent in the visual arts. Even though nuns played a very important role in promoting Buddhism, Jainism, etc., and they were donors throughout, and they were also patrons of the art. However, their donation has not been immortalized through sculptures, and very rare depiction of such incidents has been undertaken. So, it is in this background that now the discussion would be focusing on a very crucial category which falls in the category of non-wives, and that is Ganikas. Desai has referred to several terracottas from Kosambi which depicts a kind of a goshti or a kind of a meeting of the city dwellers and the Ganikas, and states that how it was very common to indulge in pleasures in the garden, that is Upvana, and these are portrayed, these scenes are portrayed on a large number of terracottas of northern India, and therefore such terracottas also reflect the tastes of the cultured elites of the urban regions. Now, while citing the sacred Mithunas in a steatite plaque found in Rajgir near Patna, that is datable around 245 to 105 BCE, where there are panels which represent wine drinking as well as offering. So, Seema Baba has observed that these scenes, and there are several other scenes also from Mathura art which belong to the Kushana period of women being offered wine by their male partner. So, what does this suggest? This is largely indicative that wine drinking could take place in a secular setting, in a normal kind of a social gathering, which could also be a part of a ritual, or which could also be a part of religious cult settings. Now, it is in this carrying on our discussion further, as far as the Ganika's projection is concerned, a very interesting description is that of the Vasant Sena series. The illustration that can be taken of the art of post-Mauryan period, which depicted Vasant Sena, where the woman is shown being offered wine in one scene and then kneeling over as if drunk in another scene. And this has largely been explained as the negative side of wine drinking, the impact of wine drinking on women. So, while no such scenes which show women, which show men in an inebriated state, or kneeling men who need help to kind of walk, or they need help to even stand, while they don't exist, there exists a Vasant Sena series which shows the kind of impact wine drinking had on women. So, this presents the social image of a sophisticated and a mature society also with reference to wine, in which it was used to ease probably the social relations, and it was also maybe used to have the right kind of atmosphere before any kind of relationship matured. On the contrary, in later periods, wine drinking came to be associated only with men, and women were considered as belonging to the deviant category if they were wine drinkers, and so they came to be projected as sexually and physically uncontrolled if they were in the habit of drinking. Now, coming to the issue of contemporary trends, the sculptors kind of portrayed the current fashions of the elite. So, whatever sculptures depict, it probably refers to the lifestyle or the current fashions that were prevalent in those times. The social ideology of the upper and the middle class patrons as well as donors was clearly visible in the kind of urban sophistication as well as tastefulness that was visible in a large number of post-Mauryan terracottas. So, most of these post-Mauryan terracottas depicted sensuous bhangas, that is poses, as well as detailed ornamentation of the yakshis, which is largely visible in Bharhut and Bodh Gaya. So, as a result of this kind of a depiction, Ganika came to be projected as an embodiment of youth and beauty, and the gender constructs in the society were firmly rooted in such a visual representation. And Seema Baba has identified interesting gender portrayal in various sculptural series, where the Ganika was presented as the usual youthful woman, and because she was a public woman, so it was all right to project her even in nude form. Thank you.